European explorers and conquerors, catalytic figures. As European exploration and colonization of the Americas unfolded, a cast of ambitious and often ruthless individuals emerged as key figures in shaping the course of history. These explorers and conquerors, driven by a mix of ambition, greed, religious fervor, and the desire for fame and fortune, played pivotal roles in the conquest and colonization of indigenous lands and the establishment of European empires in the New World. One of the most iconic figures of this era is Hernán Cortés, the Spanish conquistador who famously led the expedition that resulted in the fall of the Aztec Empire in present-day Mexico. Cortés, a skilled military strategist and charismatic leader, arrived in the Americas in 1519 with a small force of Spanish soldiers and indigenous allies. Over the course of 3 tumultuous years, he waged a relentless campaign against the Aztec Empire, culminating in the capture of its capital city, Tenochtitlan, in 1521. Cortés's conquest of the Aztec Empire marked a turning point in the history of the Americas, signaling the beginning of Spanish domination in the region and the downfall of one of the most powerful indigenous civilizations. Another towering figure of the era is Francisco Pizarro, the Spanish conquistador who orchestrated the conquest of the Inca Empire in present-day Peru. Like Cortés, Pizarro arrived in the Americas with a small band of Spanish soldiers and embarked on a daring campaign to overthrow the Inca Empire. In 1532, Pizarro captured the Inca Emperor Atahualpa and subsequently executed him, plunging the Inca Empire into chaos. Over the following decades, Spanish forces consolidated their control over the region, establishing the Viceroyalty of Peru and laying the foundations for Spanish colonial rule in South America. Other notable explorers and conquerors of the era include Ferdinand Magellan, the Portuguese explorer who led the first circumnavigation of the globe, Juan Ponce de Leon, the Spanish explorer who led the first European expedition to Florida, and Vasco Núñez de Balboa, the Spanish explorer who discovered the Pacific Ocean while crossing the Isthmus of Panama. These explorers and conquerors, fueled by a sense of adventure and the promise of riches, blazed trails across uncharted territories, mapping new lands, establishing trade routes, and laying the groundwork for European colonization of the Americas. The exploits of these European explorers and conquerors were fueled by a potent mix of ambition, greed, and religious zeal. Many saw themselves as agents of divine providence, tasked with spreading Christianity and civilization to the heathen peoples of the Americas. Others were driven by more earthly motives, such as the quest for gold, silver, and other valuable resources that could be extracted from the New World. Regardless of their motivations, these explorers and conquerors played a decisive role in shaping the course of history and leaving an indelible mark on the Americas. However, it is essential to acknowledge that the actions of European explorers and conquerors had profound and often devastating consequences for indigenous peoples and societies. The conquest and colonization of the Americas resulted in the displacement, subjugation, and exploitation of countless indigenous communities, leading to the loss of land, culture, and lives on an unprecedented scale. The legacies of colonization continue to reverberate through the Americas today as indigenous peoples grapple with the ongoing effects of centuries of dispossession, marginalization, and discrimination. In conclusion, European explorers and conquerors played a central role in shaping the course of history in the Americas, leading expeditions of discovery, conquest, and colonization that transformed the region forever. Their exploits, fueled by a potent mix of ambition, greed, and religious zeal, laid the groundwork for European domination of the Americas and left an enduring legacy that continues to shape the region to this day. However, It is essential to recognize the profound and often devastating consequences of European colonization for indigenous peoples and societies, whose lives and cultures were forever changed by the collision of worlds. Transformations in indigenous societies. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas triggered profound transformations in indigenous societies, reshaping social structures, economic systems, and cultural practices in ways that would have lasting consequences for generations to come. One of the most significant changes brought about by European contact was the disruption of traditional power structures within indigenous societies. Prior to European arrival, indigenous communities across the Americas were organized into complex social hierarchies governed by chiefs, elders, and other traditional leaders. However, the influx of European colonizers and the imposition of colonial rule led to the erosion of indigenous authority and the displacement of traditional leaders. European colonizers often installed their own puppet rulers or allied with indigenous factions willing to collaborate with them, further undermining indigenous autonomy and sovereignty. The economic systems of indigenous societies also underwent profound transformations as a result of European contact. Traditional subsistence economies based on hunting, fishing, agriculture, and trade were disrupted by the introduction of European goods, technologies, and economic practices. European colonizers sought to exploit the natural resources of the Americas for their own profit, leading to the extraction of valuable resources such as gold, silver, furs, and timber. Indigenous peoples were often coerced or forced into labor on European-run plantations, mines, and ranches, leading to the exploitation and impoverishment of indigenous communities. Moreover, the introduction of European diseases and the resulting demographic collapse had profound economic consequences for indigenous societies. The loss of skilled laborers, artisans, and knowledge holders disrupted traditional economic activities and undermined indigenous self-sufficiency. Traditional trading networks and economic alliances were disrupted as communities struggled to cope with the devastating impact of disease and displacement. As a result, indigenous economies became increasingly integrated into the global economy dominated by European powers, leading to the further marginalization and exploitation of indigenous peoples. European contact also brought about significant changes in indigenous belief systems, spiritual practices, and cultural traditions. European missionaries sought to convert indigenous populations to Christianity, often through coercion or force, leading to the suppression of indigenous religions and spiritual practices. Indigenous languages, customs, and cultural traditions were often banned or discouraged by European authorities, further eroding indigenous identities and cultural autonomy. However, indigenous peoples also adapted and resisted European colonization through acts of cultural preservation, resistance, and resilience, seeking to maintain their cultural heritage and ancestral traditions in the face of overwhelming pressure. In conclusion, the transformations brought about by European contact in indigenous societies were profound and far-reaching, reshaping social, economic, and cultural landscapes in ways that would have lasting consequences for generations to come. The erosion of traditional power structures, economic systems, and cultural practices undermined indigenous autonomy and sovereignty, leading to the marginalization and exploitation of indigenous communities by European colonizers. However, indigenous peoples also demonstrated resilience and resistance in the face of colonization, seeking to preserve their cultural heritage and ancestral traditions amidst the tumultuous changes brought about by European contact.